Most of us in the class are speaking in Persian, and our native and mother language of Tango is Persian language or Farsi language, and our target language is English. So tonight in our current class we are going to talk about being a good interpreter for our target language. So let's pretend that we are doing this interpretation in two languages, which is English and Persian. Tonight we are going to talk about this important issue. Starting from this very first page, consecutive interpreting rules and tips. We have almost 21 rules and regulations for going the very top interpretation anywhere we are in the future. We may be in an office, we may be with a group of people, so we are going to do that. Rules for consecutive interpreting. Number one. What's the rule number one? Please concentrate. Do not interrupt the speaker. The entire question or answer must be finished before you commence your interpretation. Do not attempt to mentally interpret until you have heard the entire message. So when you're sitting among two people who are speaking in two languages, which is English and Persian, please make sure to do not interrupt the speaker when he or she is speaking to the person. As a good and professional interpreter, you have to wait until he finish his speech or she finish her speech. Then you can go ahead and you can do the translation. Number two, do not add anything to the message. No additions of any kind are allowed. Sometimes it happens among the community. I have seen some interpreter who add some extra words, some extra even sentence as an interpreter, which is not perfect. So as a good and professional interpreter, we have to not add anything to the message, and we don't have the right to add any additions in the message. So that's why we have to do our job exactly as a machine. Number three, do not omit the message. Do not leave anything that was said out of the interpretation. So when we do our role as a good interpreter, we do not have the right to omit anything from the message, and also we do not allowed to leave anything that was said out of the interpretation. Even there is some word that we think this is not necessary to be mentioned here, but we have to act as a machine, and we have to do the translation without cutting anything, without omitting anything, without leaving anything or adding anything. Number four, do not change the message. Do not make changes to the message received. Any message we do receive from the speaker, we have to do the translation directly, without any addition or without any decreasement or increasement. Number five, use the formal words. Do not use informal words. As a professional interpreter, wherever we are, we have to use the very top formal words, because in a personal meeting, in a formal meeting, an official meeting, wherever we are, we have to do our job. Don't care who they are, what they are talking about, but just concentrate and think who you are. What is your job in that conversation? You're an interpreter. You have to show your profession. your skills, your ability. As a professional interpreter, you have to translate or interpret with the formal words and by the very right way. Verse 6. Take brief notes. Write down all concrete information such as names, descriptions, colors, numbers, years, etc. Wherever you are acting as a good interpreter, you have to write down all concrete information because during their speech and their discussion, you may not remember some important points like colors, numbers, years, or short descriptions that the speaker may not repeat that again, but you have to write down those important points. So later on, when he or she or they are speaking about that points, you have to make sure to understand what he or she or they are talking about. So you have to take some brave notes and write down the concrete information. Number 7. No extraneous noises. This is important. Do not make any sounds such as mm, well, okay. So these extra noises are coming from the speaker. He or she may act or be a position holder, someone who is talking, but you as an interpreter, you are here to just translate or interpret the very right sentences and words directly with not adding any extra sound, such as these sounds that I have just mentioned before. Number 8. No double interpretation. Provide a one-word interpretation for the one word her. Sometimes it happens like some people I have seen before who are sitting somewhere and talking to someone. They are saying a sentence which is made of 6 or 7 words. But when the interpreter wanna just translate or interpret that sentence, he or she makes that sentence like made of 11, 12, or 15 words, more or less than the sentence which is being mentioned by the speaker. That's not correct. We are here and we are acting as an interpreter, and we have to translate the words one by one and provide a one-word interpretation for the one word heard. So when he or she is talking about something and the sentences including of 7 words in that language, we have to interpret that in another language by the same amount of words. 7 words, not more and not less. That's the job for a very professional interpreter. Number 9. Maintain the same register. Raise or lower your level of sophistication of the language in accordance to what you have heard. So that's very important. When you're there to do your job as an interpreter, you have to take care of the raise and the level of sophistication of the language in accordance to what you have heard. So what you have heard, you have to do the interpretation similar to that level, not more and not low or down. Number 10. Speak loudly, clearly, and confidently. You must project professionalism at all time. You're going to be recorded. So that's very important for you guys as a good interpreter. Anywhere you're doing interpretation, you may be recorded So later on, the pupil, the organizations, the offices, and the community may use your speech because they do not understand the language that the speaker is talking about. So you have to make sure to do the interpretation quite similar to the speaker. Then they may record and later on they may hear from you instead of the speaker or the main person. That's why this part is important. Speak loudly, clearly, and confidently. You must project professionalism at all time because you're going to be recorded. Number 11. If you do not know the interpretation for a word or expression, then make your best educated guess in according to the text. Sometimes it happened before and it may happen again that you do not know a word, the meaning of a word or an expression in the language that you have to do the interpretation. Then what you have to do, just make sure to use your best educated gaze in according to the text. For example, when the speaker is talking about a subject, there is a text over. So they are talking about, for example, mathematics. Then the one word inside a sentence which is made of more than 15 words. For example, you may not understand that one word. So you can translate that entire text and you can include that one word, but using your best educated gaze in the field. So that may work and you may not change the entire meaning of that sentence, or you are not there to tell them that I don't know the meaning of this one single word in this sentence. So you have to act as a professional and you have to just translate that sentence based on the entire text and use your educated gaze. Number 12. When an idiomatic expression is utilized, then you must provide the equivalent expression to convey the meaning and not explain the expression. This is important. When an idiomatic expression is utilized, then what to do? You have to provide the equivalent expression to convey the meaning and not explain the expression. It happens most often the pupil and the speaker use expression. It is difficult to understand all the expressions in a language which is a target language for you. Even in our native language, we may not understand most of our expression that we have in Persian. Then you must and you have to concentrate what is the general meaning of this expression. Then you can just interpret the equivalent expression just to convey the meaning and not explain the expression. So you have to just convey the meaning of that expression. You don't have to translate and interpret all that expression one by one as a second speaker for that language. Number 13. Interpret all filler words utilized by the speaker, such as will, you know, okay. They must all be interpreted with equivalent filler words. When the speaker, for example, we are a Persian interpreter, English to Persian. When the speaker says will, we shouldn't change the meaning of this will, which means hoop in Persian. We shouldn't change that. Like to say instead of hoop, بسیار خوب, bale, or something else, or you know, شما میفهمید. We shouldn't add something شما بهتر میفهمید or okay بله درست. We cannot add or deduct or cut any word among those words. The insistment here is to make sure that the interpreter should just do the interpretation one by one. Number 14. Remember in what language you heard the source informations that you might go into the correct target language when interpreting. Remember in what language you heard the source. Sometime you may face some speak or speech which is telling to you about some story, about some issue. That's important for you. Before going to that interpretation, you may know that today I'm going to do the interpretation for these two guys, and they are going to talk about, for example, chemistry subject. It is better for you as a good interpreter to have some information about chemistry. Then when you go to the job, when you go to the mission, and you're interpreting for these two guys who are talking about this a specific subject, which is chemistry, you may not face any problem, any challenge compare to the time that you may not have any knowledge about that subject and they're going to talk about, you may not have enough vocabulary for that subject and enough information, then you may face some problems. So for a good interpreter, it would be helpful to have information about the subject that the speakers are going to talk about. Number 15. Remember the gender of all speakers. This is a must. This is a must when going into any language you're interpreting. So, sometime in a very big gathering, in a conference, in a workshop, in a diplomatic gathering, when the people are talking about someone and someone's gender is she or he, then if you do the interpretation and you just use wrong gender for the person, so everyone may laugh over there, and that's not perfect for you as an interpreter. So you have to concentrate and make sure that the gender of all speakers are very important. Number 16. Follow the story. Remember everything that has inspired in the story so that you may provide a better interpretation of oncoming events, which includes term used. Follow the story before going to the interpretation, especially somewhere that you are there to do the interpretation live, online. For example, a person, a president, a minister, a position holder is talking to the pupil and you have to do the live interpretation over there. Then you have to know about the story that he or she is talking about. Remember everything that has inspired in the story so that you may provide a better interpretation of oncoming events. So it's important for you to make sure that you have a pre-information about the subject that he or she is talking in the field. Then that will facilitate your interpretation for the audience, and that would be very helpful for you. You may feel comfortable, relax. Otherwise, if you go somewhere and you don't know the story, you don't know the title, you don't know the text, then you may face suddenly with something that you may not understand and you don't know, you don't have any pre-information about. And all the audience may just look at you and they may blame on you that you are not a good interpreter. That's not good for our personality. Number 17. Interpret all profanity. Do not use more blunt terms, euphemisms for vulgarism. This is important. So, just do interpret all profanity. Do not use more bland. Do not use something extra. Do not add any term from yourself to just consider, for example, euphemism, and you may not perform to just translate or interpret that directly. Euphemism means if you hear some bad words, you may try to translate that by the right way. مثل که بعض لغت‌های ناخوشایند یا غیر ادبی در جای استفاده شما کوشش کنین که شکل بهتر از او استفاده کنیم. او رو برش میگن euphemism. Just do not do that. So that's not your job. You're an interpreter as a machine. You're there to just interpret all those words directly. Vulgarism means wild actions یا وحشیگری. So for برای بعض لغت هایی که خارج از چوکات ادبیات است، اگر کسی گوینده چنین لغت را بر ما شما میگه به عنوان یک ترجمان فارسی به انگلیسی، نیاز نیست و وظیفه ما نیست، صلاحیت ما نیست که ما را تغییر بدیم برای از که حسن تعبیر داشته باشیم یا به شکل بهترش را ترجمه کنیم برای شنونده ما که انگلیسی زبان است. ما نیاز است که و وظیفه ماست که اصل گفته را فقط تبدیل کنیم به زبان شنونده که احتمالاً از فارسی به انگلیسی ترجمه کنیم یا از انگلیسی به فارسی. So that's important for us to just interpret and translate directly and all profanity without adding or removing something. Number 18. Do not do any conversions. When answers are provided in pesos or kilos, or the 24-hour clock is used, will be interpreted in just the same fashion and not converted. So, we don't have the right to do any conversions. When there is an answer or a question in pesos or kilos, like the very top and very low measurements, or the 24-hour clock means like we have to consider each seconds, each minutes, each hours, the time, the date is used. They will be interpreted in just the same fashion. So you don't have to, and you have no the right as a good interpreter to bring some changes in the design, in the fashion, in the shape of that speech. You have to do the interpretation quite similar to the speech that you have heard from the speaker. You don't have the right to convert. You don't have the right to add some extra words. Number 19. You must wait at least 2 complete seconds before commencing your interpretation. You must begin your interpretation no more than 7 seconds after the speaker has finished the question or answer. When you are acting as a good interpreter and you do the interpretation for 2 or more than 2 people, when the speaker is speaking, you have to wait for him. Do not interrupt. Then, when his or her speech is finished, at least 2 complete seconds you have to wait, and you have to make sure that he or she is done with his speech, question or answer or explanation. Then you can do your interpretation. And also, you must begin your interpretation no more than 7 seconds after the speaker has finished the question or answer or explanation. Sometime, when there is a case, an issue, a time, that you are not able to do the interpretation after that 2 complete seconds, then the maximum time limit for you is 7 seconds. Do your interpretation and do the translation not more than 7 seconds. I hope you guys may just note and write down the points that you may not understand. Then please feel free to ask me, so I will go back to that page and we may talk about. Number 20. This is important. You may ask for repetitions. You will state, may the interpreter have a repetition, please? As a professional interpreter, the best way to ask for a repetition is, may the interpreter have a repetition, please? Don't ask, can you repeat that? Or, pardon me, would you please repeat that sentence again? Or, a bit louder, I cannot understand you. What do you say? Let's do not say these things. The very perfect sentence for a good interpreter is, may the interpreter have a repetition, please? Then the person may repeat that and you may do the interpretation. This is a very important question. How many repetitions you are allowed? How many repetitions am I allowed? It is different in different states and different countries and different continents. For example, in California, an interpreter has only 2 time rights to ask for repetition in an entire speech or conversation. For example, when you're in a gathering and someone is over there talking to the audience, you may not understand her or his speech, then you have only twice chance to ask him or her about the repetition. And what do you use? May the interpreter have a repetition, please? Then he or she may repeat that and you may do your interpretation. If you repeat this action for the 3rd time, you may not act as a professional interpreter. Number 21. Do not mix different language words at all. That's important. For example, when we say that I'm an interpreter for these 2 languages, Persian and English, I have to make sure that I do know all or entire words for both languages. I shouldn't use or mix different language words. For example, if I'm here to translate from English to Persian and the English speaker says to me, like, okay, I'll concentrate in this field and I'll solve your problem. I should say in Persian, درست ما دقت لازمه در این زمینه انجام میتم و مشکل شما را حل میکنم. There's no way to say, for example, he said, okay, I can say, okay, مشکل شما را یا problem شما را در این زمینه solve میکنم و ما concentrate میکنم. So we shouldn't mix different language words. When we do the translation, it should be pure and clear for the one who is listening to us, because he or she may not know that word and that's not a professional job, so we have to take care of. Number 22, concentrate 100%, visualize the message, sound self-assured and poised. We have to concentrate, we have to focus, we have to take care, we have to pay attention 100%. As a good interpreter, we have to be in the state, we have to be in the area, we have to be over there exactly. Our body, our mental, our mind, and we have to concentrate, we have to listen. Then we have to make sure, first of all, I do understand what he or she is talking about. Then we can do the interpretation. If we miss some word, we may change the subject, we may change the message, and that's exactly not our job. These 22 tips were the very important points for a good interpreter.